This is Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure. It's Universal's latest Harry Potter ride, and at the time, the single largest investment in a ride at any company in the world. At $300 million, this coaster blends the latest dark ride technology with extensive coaster innovations. Today, we'll take an equally extensive look at the engineering work and technology, so come with us as we pull back the curtain and show you how it works. While Hagrid's opened in 2019, our adventure begins 20 years back in 1999 with the opening of Dueling Dragons, one of the marquee attractions to a budding new park, Universal's Islands of Adventure. A twisted structure of steel tracks sat at the back of the park as two separate interlocking inverted coasters brought riders within inches of each other, a completely unmatched modern thrill. In 2009, Dueling Dragons became part of the very first Wizarding World of Harry Potter, letting guests immerse themselves in the world of Hogsmeade like never before. After 18 years of operation, the two coasters would be closed and removed, leaving a substantial plot of land to work with. The rise of Hagrid's began shortly after the dust settled on Dueling Dragons, with construction completely reshaping the 7-acre plot over 2018. While fan speculation ran wild, Universal's habit of staying quiet left the concrete pillars called footers as one of only two clues fans had to work with. The arrival of shipments from Swiss coaster manufacturer Intamin were the second clue that this was a major addition. Known for the portfolio of launch coasters varying from thrilling to family-friendly, Intamin continues sending containers of brown track and launch sections and equipment to the park. After the ride's staggering 5,053 feet of track were complete, along with its dense forest theming and testing, Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure opened on June 13, 2019. Winding into the queue of Hagrid's, past Dueling Dragons riders will be happy to see that the entire queue was redone, but retains much of the abandoned catacomb feel of the former coasters. Several nods to the ride include a sign for a dueling club near two red and blue dragons, as well as several dragon eggs. Further in, a pre-show effect presents the premise of the coaster through a hidden Musion effect, a very common holographic style effect that uses an angled film to reflect a floor or ceiling mounted screen. Some additional lighting effects are used throughout the queue to simulate outside sunlight and screens mounted to the ceiling. Upon arrival to the load station, riders are met with what's called a continuous loading station and platform. This means riders step onto a conveyor belt that matches the rate of motion for each incoming train. During this time, the trains or the platform do not stop, but riders are able to load in relatively stationary manners, but have a physical time window to board before reaching the end. Once boarded, riders will pull down on a lap bar in order to be considered secure. During normal operations, operators verify riders are secure and tap each row using an RFID tag, and the lights come on. A complex spin on standard coaster technology is the driving force behind Hagrid's, and the ride's 12 trains are no different. Seating 14 riders each, these trains offer two different seating positions and use a fiberglass motorbike and sidecar setup that was provided by Universal Creative to Intamin during the design process. Below each row are audio-electrical junction boxes that control the sounds and lighting of the train, such as engine noises and headlights. Each train communicates with the ride control system through an onboard computer located under cars 4 and 7. These elements are powered by quick recharging and high-output supercapacitors located under cars 1 and 4. Another feature of the station track the trains ride on is the power and communication rails that are packed in there as well. Connecting to these rails are pickup shoes, brushes, or combs that are then tied into the train's power system. These communication rails present a way for the combs to maintain a steady connection while in motion through sections of the ride like the station. These rails allow for trains to communicate with the ride control system and also power audio lighting elements. Below all of this is the train's main chassis design featuring wheel assemblies with road wheels, guide wheels, and upstops. A centered spine for each car and two main propulsion platforms are included as well. The first is a drive tire plate mounted left to center that each tire will push on to move the train at certain points. The second is an LSM receiver yoke, a heavy tray of alternating polarity magnets that pass by LSM stators. But what are LSM and LSM stators? Like many modern thrill rides, gone are the days of lift hills or even elevator lifts in many cases to gain potential energy. Today, many coasters rely on linear synchronous motors, or LSMs, to impart intense forces into these trains. In its simplest analogy, it's like a series of electromagnets turning on and off in sequence to move a magnetic block down a path. But what's actually inside of them? These white fins are called stators and use enameled wire in tight coils to run a very high current in a short period of time. This trio of high current carrying windings are connected in a star pattern to inverters located below the track. When each coil is given its own alternating current, they create a three-phase magnetic field pattern that moves in sequence from coil to coil through the wire and around an iron core inside the stator. These magnetic fields impart attractive and repulsive forces to permanent magnets that are fixed to the spine of the train. In between the LSM stators, Hall effect sensors detect the permanent magnets of the train, providing motion data. Using the data, the launch system sets the speed of the current sequence for each stator so the magnetic field remains synced with the train as it accelerates. With an efficiency of 60 to 70% conversion, these LSMs still produce heat. To cool down the stators, they have a liquid cooling layer sandwiched between the halves of the stator. Heat transfer occurs via thermal conduction from coils and the iron core to the aluminum cooling layer that has high thermal conductivity and diffusivity. In order to create this much power to launch such a large train, the LSM system is not plugged into the local power grid but uses supercapacitors. Like the train's own power system, these LSM supercapacitor banks, which can provide high output current for a short period of time, also are able to recharge quickly. When directed, the LSMs can each have access to kilowatts of power without causing a park-wide blackout. Aside from being a contactless launch system, the LSMs can also act as contactless brakes by acting against the movement of the train or by simply not having any current pass through them. Together, we get a system capable of easily harnessing stored electrical power and using it to accelerate a multi-ton train through multiple launches and up to speeds of 50 miles per hour. If you've seen Hagrid's recover from a ride stop, you may notice it backs up past LSMs before moving forward into the launch. This is because relaunching the train from a standstill would take up too much power from one single pass. So like in the station, there are drive tires before most LSM fins. Nearby proximity sensors can detect the train and turn on drive tires and get the train up to a certain speed before reaching the LSMs. This is called a rolling launch, where the trains are already moving. Additional sensors can also detect when a train has left the launch area and can quickly raise copper eddy current brake fins as a safety precaution. These are reliable electric-free fail-safes that make sure if the train rolls back for any reason, it can be safely brought to a stop. In sequence, the launch works as follows. The proximity sensor sets the train, turn on the drive tires if they are present, move the train forward to the launch, activating the LSM stators, moving the redundant brakes up, and the system waits for the train to safely clear the launch. Then it does this 6 more times. Now that we understand how the LSMs work, we can move into how they factor into the ride control system. The tech behind Hagrid's is very complex, however, the way the ride control system communicates with the trains is fairly simple. While the course features many launches and show scenes, the trains are only able to communicate with the RCS, or the ride control system, inside the station. When the train leaves the station, the RCS knows which train is departing and can keep an accurate track record of where the trains are based on which launches are activated. While there are sensors for audio control on the train, that info is not relayed back to the RCS, and there are no sensors or radios meant to track the exact location of each train. Because of the course design and information on track switches the RCS can get, it does not need to know where each train is down to the millimeter. Even with running up to 10 trains, it can reasonably rely on the segmented information to keep track of them all. All other modern coasters use a similar method of tracking trains because even if the RCS needs to stop a train, it can only bring trains to a stop at these specific locations on the course. For rides like Hagrid's that run multiple trains, the ride control system will often present the expected location of each train on a lighted schematic of the ride like this. Displays like this help operators know how likely the ride is to back up if a delay persists. However, typically a display like this is only viewable by the main operator at the panel, and on Hagrid's, this operator is not visible to guests. This method of train tracking is called a block system. A block system is a given location on a course where a train can be stopped or reaccelerated, such as any launch section or segments of the station, or a brake run. This safety protocol allows only one train to occupy each block while operating in order to prevent collisions. During the ride, each train is moved to keep at least one block section between the trains ahead and behind it. This usually only applies to areas in what can be called volatile blocks, where there is a movement that cannot be undone. In the event that the train does not clear a launch, or does not arrive or does not stop at the block section, the ride will stop all other trains and emergency stop the ride. In non-volatile locations like the station, trains can be parked or moved right next to each other. In the event a train is taking too long to load or unload or has encountered an error, the surrounding trains out on the course can be paused on block sections. Having more trains requires more block sections, which can increase safety and rider capacity. By the way, if you'd like one of these full-color circuit boards that I'm using in this video, you can get one at amusementlabs.etsy.com. Each one helps create videos just like this, and a portion of proceeds are donated to give kids the world. During the ride, you will pass multiple animated figures of Hagrid, Fluffy, a centaur, and unicorns at the very end. Created by Animatronics and Life Formations, these detailed figures have activated motions with dialogue or sounds when a train passes by. These figures tend to have their own control systems for driving their motions and running audio. When a train pauses, the figures will each reach the end of their programmed motions and come to a stop. The only exception to this are the pair of unicorns at the end that will continue moving with audio even if a train has stopped. These are more atmospheric animatronics and are not tied to a specific show scene. But the ride is only as good as the technology itself, so let's hop aboard and journey off to the next part of our behind the scenes tour. With the help of 2 rolling launches, we're headed out towards Hagrid's hut to meet Hagrid and his blast-ended Scroot, and aided by drive tires to run us through the hut. A third launch sends us soaring towards the castle ruins before diving down for some high-speed turns. Turning right, we reach the 4th launch before circling around and coming close to Fluffy, the infamous giant 3-headed dog. With a quick pass by Fluffy, riders quickly turn left into the next major point of the ride. The train is accelerated down into a trench, and then suddenly, riders emerge from the mist only to see they've come to a dead end, and the train stalls on the ride's 70-degree incline spike. One of the major innovations that Hagrid's was the first to utilize was a fast track switch. This track switch is able to swap out one track section for another while the train is still moving. After the train has passed over the switch and reaching the valley of the hill, the fast track switch is cleared to safely swap over. Using an aligning bumper, the track is safely aligned with the other track, connecting the train to the next section before it even stalls on the spike. If the fast track switch fails to move over or stops during its motion, there are fail-safes. Since the switch takes place when the train is still being accelerated away from the track switch, if the switch encounters an issue, the LSMs can immediately start bringing the train to a stop and copper brake fins pop up as well. The hill is actually part of that failsafe, as the train will not be able to make it back over the small hill if the LSM fins are turned off after confirming that the switch has encountered an issue. If all goes according to plan, the train continues backwards and travels up through a helix and into a show building. An interesting feature is that the ride actually has 3 fast track switches, and the train is now passing over one right now as riders back into the dead end. What riders don't realize is they're part of the next big coaster innovation, the drop track. Mounted on vertical linear guides is a train-length section of track with drive tires and brakes. The train is driven by the tires into position atop a hydraulic cylinder. On cue, a valve opens, emptying hydraulic fluid into the accumulators and tank, which drops the track and the entire train 16 feet down, half of which is a pure freefall before hitting eddy current brakes and bottoming out. While riders catch their breath from the sudden drop, the train is realigned with the track at the bottom of a ball and catch system, and the control system clears the train to exit the shaft. To increase capacity, there are 2 drop shafts, which is why there is a second fast track switch at the top of the drop track section and a third fast track switch at the bottom. This third fast track switch reconnects the train to the main course, and riders are launched for the 7th and final time at high speeds through 2 high-speed sweeping turns before reaching the brake run. Using more eddy current fin brakes, this train is slowed down to a manageable speed and then lowered to let the drive tires take over and move the train. The train is connected to the bus bar system as it approaches the unload station, passing by animated figures of unicorns before turning right. Riders can then unload with a conveyor belt the same way they boarded earlier, reflecting on the wild 3-minute forbidden motorbike adventure they just experienced. The ride opened in 2019 to rave reviews and very long lines from eager fans, and with the investment, it went on to be a reliable family coaster running at full capacity with no issues, right? Well...
And that's where the story should end.
When Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure opened, it posted a staggering 10-hour line, with some fans waiting as long as 14 hours for a single ride due to the influx of guests and its limited capacity at the time. At the time, the ride could only run up to 6 trains, which stunted the ride's capacity at just over 600 people per hour, a far cry from the intended design. What would happen is new riders unfamiliar with a moving station and the urgency to board and pull down the lap bar quickly tended to delay a train leaving the station on time. Given the continuous motion of all trains in the station, the ride would have to station stop, which halted all station trains and would mess up the timing. Surrounding trains both in the station and on the course would also have to try and accommodate this delay, but could only do so much up to when the train on the last launch met the final brake run. After this, a progressive pause on all trains called a cascade would occur, leading to interruptions and even ride faults and breakdowns. During the night in 2019 and the extended shutdowns of 2020, Universal spent countless hours modifying the program of Hagrid's ride control system, targeting the inefficiencies of its operation and how it moved trains in relation to others. However, this still did not end the ride's problems. Each night, trains are inspected and sometimes rotated out, with additional trains meant to keep the ride running, with at least 10 trains. The maintenance spurs of Hagrid's are located just before the first turn onto the ride course via a standard switch track. These maintenance spurs, though, can only hold 6 trains, with no other place to inspect the other 4 unless they're rotated out, which is a time-consuming process. To solve this issue, Universal recently filed permits to extend the maintenance spurs further back into the area that's currently used for maintenance for Forbidden Journey's ride vehicles. Being a maintenance-intensive ride and constantly in demand, Universal sees it important that Hagrid's runs with 10 trains as much as it can, and is willing to invest in the ride's efficiency. While there are clearly incredible benefits to crafting a state-of-the-art, seemingly out-of-control, record-breaking coaster, Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure shows that no one is immune to the pitfalls of cutting-edge innovation. While most people won't ever really know the technology behind a ride like Hagrid's, Universal and other parks around the world know if they can create something that pushes technology ahead of the curve, there will always be people willing to wait on an adventure into the Forbidden Forest. Thanks so much for joining us today. Let me know what other rides you'd like to hear about, and for more How It Works videos, click here. Please consider supporting us on Patreon, Etsy, or just hitting subscribe. Thanks for watching, stay curious, and I'll see you in the parks.